In this video, I'm going to share exactly how I wasted 3 years learning how to code, and here's exactly what I would do differently in 2025 to shortcut that. Now, if you're like most people, you probably go online on the internet and you hear a million different things as far as how to learn to code. You might see something like, Python is the easiest language. Oh, you might hear HTML is super easy, you should start there, or CSS or JavaScript. If you're just starting out, all of this can be super overwhelming. At least it was for me. And to just give you some kind of context here, I'll share the exact way that I learned, and then we'll kind of talk through what I would do differently if I was literally just trying to learn as fast as possible and get a high paying job as fast as possible. So here is what my path looked like. So this is baby me. What I first learned, and this was in high school, I was taught a little bit of HTML. All right, so this, let's call it start or 0 year. I first learned HTML and I learned a little bit of CSS. Okay, not a bad start. I think this is easy for most people to pick up here. I first learned HTML and CSS, all right? And that's good in the sense that you learn basic websites, you learn kind of how the web works. What did I learn next? In college, I was introduced to Python here. So for better or for worse, Python is an easy language to learn, but as you get more into coding, you start to realize they're all kind of the same at the end of the day. Once you kind of pick up on the patterns that are going on, once you pick up on how code is structured and what's actually going on, it doesn't really matter the language you learn, okay? So I'm not necessarily going to toss a check mark next to this. It is helpful to know because it's a very versatile language. But if you are strictly trying to speed run your path to, let's call this a king down here. That's a crown right there. So this is money. If you're trying to speed run your path to money, going down this route may not be the quickest way for you to do that. But let's continue. I'll keep going on telling my story. We did Python here. And then what do we do next? We did Java. So in school, what I was learning is data structures, algorithms, things like that aren't necessarily pertinent for the job that you're going to start. So this was the main thing I was taught and I spent a lot of time on, right? So these combined were probably 0 to 3 years spent on these, okay? And yes, they teach you the fundamentals, but they're not going to give you the skills you need to actually do this job down here, to do the role of a software engineer, to do the role of a web developer, right? Which I've done for the past 3 or 4 years now. They do teach you some skills, but it's not really job specific, okay? It's more like the fundamentals as opposed to the tactical stuff you need on the job, okay? And then this was taught in school. These were taught in school. And then what I did next, I actually learned JavaScript. So JavaScript and Node. And Node is just a JavaScript framework for writing backend code. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. We'll get to it eventually. But yeah, I learned JavaScript and Node. And this was the highest ROI thing that I did. So this was maybe a 20-hour course. So let's call it 20 hours. And it only cost me like $15. And I did this course on my own time to learn JavaScript and Node. And it really did not take that much time, right? And yes, it kind of built off some fundamentals I learned over here and over here and over here. But in reality, if I just wanted to shortcut my path from complete beginner, so from complete beginner down to making 6 figures remotely or, whatever you want, I would take the shortcut here, right? So realistically, here is the quickest path, right? If I was redoing this today, here's exactly what I would do. I would learn HTML in CSS, but I'm not going to spend too much time here, right? So once you kind of understand the basics, you don't need to actually master it, because here's kind of the mindset you got to get into as an engineer is you're not going to know everything, okay? You're not going to be an expert at everything. You're not going to know every fact in the world, but the great thing about it is you have Google, right? You have to adopt the mindset of a problem solver. And when you don't know something, you look it up on Google. Or recently, you look it up on an AI tool like Claude, ChatGPT, or my personal favorite, text editor called Cursor that's got Claude built into it. So like when you're writing code, you can ask questions directly to Claude, right? And what makes this great is as soon as I get stuck on the problem, I'm no longer stuck because I can just ask this and it fixes it for me, right? So as a beginner, that's going to be super helpful for you because you're not going to know what's going on. You're going to get stuck and you're going to want to help. And whereas before you had to Google and click a few sites and search for an answer, now it doesn't matter anymore, right? You're going to find the answer instantly. instantly, which means your rate of learning is going to be incredible. And ultimately, what that means for you is you can get to this place where you're earning 6 figures remotely or what have you, whatever you want to go for, right? If you want to go for more total compensation, if you want to go for remote, if you want to do whatever, like you can get there a lot quicker. Okay, let's continue here. So I would learn HTML, CSS. I would learn some basic JavaScript, and all JavaScript is basically a tool for animating your website, writing the backend for your website. It's the logic part of your website, whereas HTML and CSS are just the visuals. This is the logic part of your website that moves stuff around the screen, that handles the backend logic, the business logic, and so on and so forth. And the actual framework that I would learn is Node, and that is the most, I guess, commonly used JavaScript backend framework is Node right here. If you know Node, so many companies use Node, and you can be immediately helpful. You can be immediately helpful to them if you understand what's going on with these. And then optionally, I would learn something, a front-end framework like React. All right, so this React and Node combo is one of the most commonly used combinations in practice today. And the reason that's important is because if you have the skills, that employers are looking for, what are they willing to do? They're willing to open their pockets and pay you plenty of money, right? And if you're wanting to learn how to code, if you're wanting to break into this industry as an adult, what probably drawed you into engineering or into coding is the fact that it does compensate very well. Okay, so that's it right there. This is the path that I would take if I were to want to go and make 6 figures, if I wanted to learn this path quicker than what it took me over here. And I'll add the caveat over here in that if you are strictly trying to get employed as fast as possible and break into this industry, this front end, focusing on front end code, so specifically React, HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript here, this is going to be your easiest path there. All right. Eventually, as you work on the job and as you're writing code and as you're engineering, you're eventually going to go to full stack or backends and eventually going to have to learn all of the skills and tools and things required to actually be a competent developer engineer across the full stack, but just to break into the industry. And this is the shortcut that I would take. And I would even add, it's like you can learn all this stuff depending on how much time you have to devote. I mean, this should take you less than a year. And realistically, this can be done in probably a matter of months. It's like if you're working full time and you can only do a couple hours a day or, a few hours a week, like it's going to take time, right? When you first start coding, it's very foreign to you. It takes time for these concepts to set in. It takes time to learn, right? And then you got to apply to jobs and so on and so forth. But this is the exact path that I would take if I were learning how to code today and I wanted to break into the industry. And one caveat I'll add, it's like I've worked at the big names. I know exactly what it takes, okay? I've worked at several different companies at this point. And even still, like focusing on front-end web development, it can catch some flag from other engineers where it's like, oh, they're not real engineers and they don't do this and that. But like the reality is when you're on the job, you're going to learn everything anyways. If you want to transition to backend or full stack or what have you, right, you can learn and get paid to learn on the job. And that's the beautiful thing of it. So yeah, just to recap, this is the exact path I would take if I wanted to make 6 figures as quickly as possible from a complete beginner standpoint, right? So again, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and I will answer them and get you the help you need. Yeah, I hope this was helpful for you and have a great day.